Welcome to the Ben and Lauren Show. I'm Ben, and this is Lauren, and here we are, another night.
Take three.
First
one, we didn't plug the microphone in. Second one, we got about 30 seconds in, and Daniel woke up and came out crying.
So here we are, number 3.
Midnight.
After midnight.
It's after midnight.
So I know we say this every time, but maybe we'll keep this one short.
Well, we may not be able to do the Torah portion part of it because I know we read the Torah portion last night.
I read it out loud.
But, I really don't remember it.
I remember a lot of children coloring books.
Well, last night was probably, we're getting ahead of ourselves in our story of our week, but the first night that our kids were all up and around at the same time in the evening, and I was so tired that I think I yawned through the entire Torah portion. I really don't remember what we read.
So we were not here for the Ben and Lauren Show last week, so it's been 2 weeks since we did the Ben and Lauren Show, and that is because our children have been sick. It was not very fun.
It was pretty epic.
Want me to tell the story how it all began?
Do you really want to get into that? Or do you just want to say, it's been 10 days?
It's been 10 days. I'll tell the story. Because I was sitting at the table.
You're blowing out your microphone.
Oh, okay. I was sitting at the table. Yeah, it's very loud, Lauren. Did it reset the microphone?
It may have reset the input. You want to bear with us? We may correct this technical issue. Yep.
Oh, man. No, that's much better.
Now
I can talk loud without it blowing up.
We learned that our little recorder has a input volume. And because this is take 3, we just found out, just now, that we have to reset that input volume every time the iPad turns on and off again.
Oh, wow.
Oh, well. Anyway, so you want to go back to the beginning?
Sure.
10 days ago, Thursday?
Now it shouldn't be blasting everyone's ears out. Now, last Ben and Lauren Show, it was very loud.
Mm-hmm.
Almost to the point where I couldn't even listen to it because it was just blaring it out. Now we've got these nice microphones, and we actually are learning how to use them.
We hope.
You put them farther away from your mouth. You can't put them up here. You got to put them down here. And turn the mic level down just a little bit. And hopefully you should hear me loud and clear. And Lauren, she has her own
Hopefully we
mic.
put them in a reasonable place and there's not a lot of scratchy noises because we didn't do a lot of testing today.
So we have 2 mics. One for her, one for me.
Yeah. I think we described that last time.
Anyway. So, yeah, it was lunchtime on Thursday afternoon, sitting there.
Everything was fine and normal.
And Daniel fell asleep in my office.
She does a lot.
Yeah, he's got a spot there where he hangs out with me, and he was sleeping there all peacefully. And we heard the sound that nobody ever wants to hear as a parent. You know the sound. So I went in there to investigate, and of course I saw exactly what I would expect to see when a boy is sick. And I basically came out and said, Lauren, I was carrying Daniel, wasn't I?
Yep.
I was carrying Daniel, and I said he threw up. And the look of sheer terror, I will never forget.
Well, we've known there's this really nasty virus going around, and we've known it since about January. And we've tried since January to avoid it to the point where when we go to the grocery store, I put all the kids in the basket, and I wipe the basket down with wipes that will kill norovirus. We weren't sure if it was norovirus or rotavirus. So we've tried really hard to avoid this because when you have 4 kids, you're starting to get out of small children family and into large children family, and when they're all under the age of 6, a stomach virus is just epically miserable and exhausting.
So this is our first stomach bug with 4 children.
Mm-hmm.
First time.
Wasn't even expecting Daniel last time we got it, and we only had 2 kids sick at once, and it was still epic.
Well, it started with Daniel, and then Susanna was next, and then after Susanna, then Abigail, and Abigail got it really hard.
Abigail got it by far the worst. It seems to have gone in order of ages, although Elena got it the lightest. Daniel got it not. If he would have been the only one, we probably wouldn't have thought it was that severe.
So the difficulty is that however this virus works, it starts off with the initial throwing up and then a fever, And then the fever breaks and they seem fine.
You think they're all better.
So they start eating and they start all over again.
Oh, no. 3 days later, they get sick again. So they're fine for 2 days. Not quite back to normal, but you figure they're just recovering. Then 3 days later, they get sick again. They got to go through the whole process of recovery again. You think, okay, this time they're going to be fine. 3 days later, they get sick again.
So it's 3 days, 3 days, 3 days. And it was 9 days. This is the 10th day since the whole thing started.
Today is the first day that we saw kids using the bathroom normally, not staying in their bed all day, and having their appetite finally come back. And even then, Susanna had a rough day today. Turns out she never went to the bathroom today, and she's laying on the couch. I hurt. And I'm like, what hurts? And when she finally showed me where she hurt, I'm like, have you gone to the bathroom at all today? So I take her in to use the bathroom because she can't even walk.
She was greatly relieved.
And she sits there and she goes, oh, wow, I feel much better now. 4-year-olds.
Yeah.
So
we were concerned about Abigail. I mean, she...
Well, Abigail is 6.5, and in our 6.5 years of having children, we have thought about going to the emergency room twice.
Once for Elena, and most recently once for Abigail.
She had 19 hours of throwing up, where she was throwing up every half hour or 45 minutes. So it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon Sunday until 10 o'clock in the morning Monday, including through the night. I guess she had a longer break at night while she was sleeping. It was only every hour and a half or so at night. So by 10 o'clock in the morning, I was starting to get pretty concerned for her. And there is medicine that you can give a kid that will stop them from throwing up. But you can't buy it over the counter because parents are too dumb to use this at home properly. You have to go to and pediatricians won't even prescribe it. I found out because out of desperation, I called the pediatrician's office.
You need to find the black market.
I've never done that before either. I'm
not serious.
I've never called the pediatrician because one of our kids was sick before, ever. It just never has come to that. But this time I called them and I basically explained the situation. I said,
if we had this medicine, we would use it responsibly.
Well, I actually said, is there anything that you can do about this? And they said, no, you have to take her to the emergency room, and we recommend going right away so they can give her this medication that I'm asking about. It's Zofran.
Can you get it prescribed by a doctor?
You can. My aunt has a condition. Actually, my family has a problem.
How about our pediatrician?
Apparently, they don't prescribe it. I should ask next time we're there. Say, look, I have one. I'm getting ahead of myself. My family has this condition where some members of my family, when they start throwing up, it is very, very difficult for them to stop. So a normal person gets a stomach virus. You know, they maybe throw up a dozen times at the most.
And I'm not used to that. In my family, usually a throw-up sickness just goes for a while and then stops and everything's fine.
Your family normally would throw up, 3 or 4 or 5 times maybe?
Yeah, and then would just stop. So this whole idea of non-stop, dehydration risk, it's just off my radar.
Right. So this happened to me as a kid. I had this problem, and I think it's given me PTSD about stomach viruses. Even though as an adult I have grown out of it, but my aunt actually has not grown out of it. So she actually carries a prescription for this anti-nausea medication because she's been hospitalized so many times with just a stomach virus. Mm-hmm. So we called about Abigail, and their advice was take her to the emergency room. Well,
we're not big on emergency room.
The trouble with an emergency room is that if we take her in, 2 things happen. It's very invasive to her. It's very disruptive to her to pick her up while she's in the middle, she's throwing up, and to take her in. So first of all, it's hard on her. Second of all, it's going to expose every single person in their waiting room at the ER to what we have, which we already know is extremely contagious. So some of us actually try to stop epidemics.
We have been very good about quarantining ourselves, well, for the most part.
We try to be very responsible about situations, especially because we have all these young children. We know they're germ carriers. We know we can get people sick.
So we've left the house a couple times, but very carefully and for very short periods of time.
Oh, during this week, you mean?
During this week.
Oh, yeah. We acted like we were a hazmat team.
Because you and I, even though we didn't really get sick, we're shedding it. I mean, we know that we're carrying it. We're carrying this virus, so.
So Abigail I knew my mom had one dose for my sister who also has this problem where she can't stop throwing up. So I called my mom and I asked her, do you still have that? She said yes. And we decided that I had been trying already everything I knew how to do for this condition to stop Abigail from throwing up. And we decided we were going to give her 1 hour, and I was going to try one more time to start rehydrating her, because part of what happens is when you start getting dehydrated, it makes you keep throwing up. If you can stop the dehydration, you can stop the throwing up. So one trick you do is that you do not feed water at all when someone's throwing up, and I hadn't done that. But you can start giving ice chips, like ground to powder, and you give like a half a teaspoon, and you wait for a half an hour. And then if the person hasn't thrown up, you give another half teaspoon, and then you gradually start increasing how much ice you give until you can actually give sips of water, and it is painstakingly slow.
Basically,
but it works.
You're hydrating them by, not osmosis, but it almost like absorbs into their
Your mouth and your esophagus can absorb water, so if you can get liquid into their system, and actually getting Pedialyte is better. I froze Pedialyte and ground it into ice. If you can get some electrolytes back into someone's system, that's what the whole point of the hospital is. They give you an IV, but if you can get electrolytes absorbed through your mouth and your esophagus without hitting your stomach will calm down. Eventually you can drink water and you can rehydrate.
So we basically set the timer for what, 15 minutes, 30 minutes?
It was 30 minutes at first. So I agreed with my mom that I would try one more time, and if Abigail threw up one more time, or it got to be, I think I gave us 2 hours, then we would get the dose from my mom. I didn't really want to give her medicine like that.
So we started at 2 hours, and then we did half hour?
I did a half an hour with Pedialyte ice chips, and Abigail finally was able to take them in, so we avoided an emergency room visit by like a hair.
I know the newbie parent mistake is when a child throws up a bunch. We know that they're dehydrated. We know that they have not drunk any water.
And dehydration issues.
And dehydration's scary and it's serious, so you want to force your child to drink water. And that's the natural thing to do, but all it does is trigger that reaction and
they throw up again.
Out it comes. And it's this endless cycle of drinking water and removing the water, and it could be very serious.
It seems very counterintuitive to have a kid fast when you're worried about dehydration, but really you have to have a kid who has not thrown up for at least an hour before you start trying to rehydrate them.
So we'll call this the throw up episode.
So we think that what we got is rotavirus.
That's kind of sounds about right.
We think that it's rotavirus because of the length of time that the kids were sick and the symptoms that they had.
It's up to 8 to 9 days?
It's somewhere between 3 to 8 days is the duration of rotavirus, and we went the full 8 days with a couple of our kids. It looks like some of the other ones may get away with 6 days.
It just seemed to go on forever. And as soon as we thought we were done, it came right back again.
Well, I think the thing is, if we only had one child or 2 children, it wouldn't have seemed so constant.
It's because you have one child going on this 8-day sickness, and the other children are fine. Then another one's like staggered. You got another one.
Right. So as soon as one's having a little space, you've got another one that you're paying attention to. So it was constant all the way through. There was at least one child I was tending to, setting that timer every 15 minutes and feeding them ice chips, and then rushing them to the bathroom or changing their clothes or doing whatever it was, or watching a fever, and you cannot give any medicine for a fever during this because they'll just throw it up.
Yeah. So the importance of maintaining all the children, not just paying all attention to one.
And you have to be keeping an eye on all of them because this kind of thing can get serious for them really quickly.
Mm-hmm. Like Abigail seems strong among our children. She seems like one of the stronger ones. It was surprising.
And she took care of herself very well.
She did great.
She had a fantastic attitude.
Yeah, she did really well.
Not sure I would have had that good of an attitude.
She didn't complain. She didn't whine.
She was very matter of fact.
She took care of it. A lot of it on her own, really. So that was a huge blessing, actually.
It was also a blessing that Elena didn't really get all that sick. I kept waiting for Elena because
Elena fought it off the best.
Well, first of all, she's our grouchiest child.
Yeah, she complains a lot.
Taking care of her while she was miserably ill would have been...
But that's interesting that this was more serious. She handled this better than if she doesn't get her way as far as breakfast in the morning.
You mean Elena?
Elena.
Yeah, Elena basically dealt with this virus by putting herself to bed. She pretty much stayed in bed for most of the week. Even when she was feeling well, she spent a lot of time sitting on her bed, or she just seemed to recognize that she needed to rest a lot, and so she kept putting herself to bed for naps. But she never really got all that sick. She only threw up once, and she did run a fever for one day for about 24 hours.
And Susanna had a trickier time.
Susanna kept being fine, and then she'd be really sick. And then she'd be fine, then she'd be really sick.
And after she's really sick, she's like, okay, back to what I was doing.
It was quite a week.
Yeah.
I would not have, this is probably the nastiest virus of its kind I've ever dealt with. And I say that as the oldest of 8.
I'm glad it is over, as far as we can tell. We tried to track down where we got this thing from. You're
probably causing all kinds of noise.
Tried to track down where this thing came from. We don't know. We have no idea.
It has a 48 to 72 hour incubation time, and I took the kids to the grocery store, but Daniel, who got it first, stayed in his car seat the whole time in an unusual effort.
And how would he get it in his car seat?
We visited Jenny, Ben's sister, for a birthday party that evening. As far as we know, nobody had it, but one of the things about rotavirus, and that I was going to conclude with, is that adults either don't get it or they get it so mildly that they may not realize that they're sick, and they're shedding the virus just like someone who got really, really, really sick, but they don't know that they were sick because they just sort of fell off for a day or two. They had a stomach ache.
That would be us right now.
Or a headache. Like the first day Daniel was sick, you said the whole day you didn't feel well.
Yeah, and it didn't. It just kind of felt kind of funny, off. And you start getting a low-grade fever for a little while.
Yeah, you had chills.
And I had some chills, and then it went away.
Right, and I don't even think I felt that. There was a couple of days I did not feel like eating, but I have no idea if that's pregnancy-related or if that's just there was so much going on.
So that was the adult version of the 8-day bug.
Mm-hmm. Now, unfortunately, it sounds like Daniel on Elena's birthday, which was right the day before this started, may have given it to Ben's dad. And Ben's dad, not realizing he had it because he just felt like he was off. It sounds like it's transferred to across our family because, again, as I was talking to my sister-in-law, as adults, at this point, we're all warned. All of us adults are warned that if we feel a little off, it's quite likely we're sick. But until we recognize that, like Jenny said, the way she's felt, if she didn't know that this illness were going around, she would not have thought that she was sick.
And now, after getting this illness, I went on one sales call with my dad.
You acted like you were going out of a hazmat
I
operation.
felt like it. I took it very seriously. I was about to say no, but I decided to go. I washed my hands really well and just tried to not breathe on anyone and tried not to touch too many things. And I really hope I didn't get anyone sick.
Well, one saving grace about this is that rotavirus dies with hand sanitizer, unlike norovirus.
Yeah. Yep.
So you can actually carry that little hand sanitizer around with you and clean your hands, and it will
I washed my
work.
hands, cleaned my hands. I mean, didn't sneeze on anyone. But I was thinking what I just did is exactly how this virus spreads. People who think they're fine because they're not showing any symptoms get other people sick. So
this has caused us to have a lot of reflections on how epidemics start.
And it's hard to explain to people why we're reluctant to get out of the house. Why are we quarantining ourselves when we're not sick? The answer is we are sick. As long as you are shedding the virus, you are sick.
It's also, we were talking about, because of the way medicine has gone about attempting to treat illnesses in our day and age, we've gone about it by trying to fool immune systems so that you can have your immune system do what it's supposed to do, get the illness and learn what it is and fight it off, supposedly while being able to continue on with your normal life, doing your normal things. And this has left us as a society not able to understand how illnesses spread, and thinking that when we have an illness, we should be able to carry about our normal life. It should not interfere in any way. We should do what we want to do. And if other people get sick, that's kind of their own fault for not being protected properly against us.
And that's kind of the societal norm. It's don't let illnesses get in the way of what's important. You know, your school, your work. Your play,
even just your entertainment. You don't want it to get in the way of you going to a party you wanted to be at.
yeah, don't cancel. If you're not throwing up this moment, then you're fine. Go. But,
Yeah.
if you go to a party with 50 people and you're shedding the virus, a certain percentage of those people will most likely get it.
And in this case, the adults will get it, not really know they have it, and nobody knows until their kids start really getting violently ill.
We wouldn't have known that we had it, except that our children were showing the symptoms of it. And for some people who have trouble with their stomachs, it could land them in the emergency room. It almost did us.
Well, it's worse than that. I have a friend right now whose son is battling Crohn's disease. And it began when he got a similar kind of virus, and basically it activated portions of his immune system and damaged his gut to the point where he now has a lifelong, life-threatening autoimmune condition. And none of us are trained to think of these kind of things this way.
No.
It's, the kid throws up for a little while, they get better, no big deal, we do what we want to as long as they're not throwing up.
It's funny, sometimes I'll describe why we're doing what we're doing, and I hear myself, and I know I make sense when I'm explaining it, but I try to hear it from other people's perspectives, and I can just tell, it's like, why are you making such a big deal about this? You're not throwing up, you're not sick, you're fine. Why make such a big deal about this?
It's because once we recognize what we have and we look at the information on it, it says, you are contagious for 14 days after you get better.
2 weeks?
You're shedding that virus for 14 days after you get better.
So that means that I showed symptoms on Thursday.
But you were better by Friday. However, it's going to be 2 weeks from, so it's going to be next Thursday that you would not be contagious anymore.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to get away with.
With you, I think, and with adults, one of the things that we've learned is that adults actually, if you have the knowledge and the awareness that you could be contagious, you can actually take a lot of steps to prevent.
A lot of hand sanitizer.
You can help other people around you. If you are responsible with a sickness, you don't pretend like you're not sick. You don't pretend like, I feel fine, so I'm not contagious. If you actually treat the people around you very carefully, and it sounds so germophobic to people, like we shouldn't have to pay any attention to these germs, we'll be fine.
But people are funny about germophobic. People will get ideas of what has germs on it and what doesn't have germs on it. Or if somebody is showing signs of being sick, a lot of times that's revolting to people. People are very upset. But if people seem fine, there's nothing to be phobic of because they seem fine.
And again, I think it comes down to our society is being taught right now that we are eradicating disease. So if you get sick, it's kind of, first of all, a weakness on your part. Second of all, to try to protect other people is just stupid because other people should be taking their own precautions. You shouldn't have to take precautions for them. And if they aren't taking the proper precautions, well, that's kind of their fault.
And I wonder if there's things that we can do to boost our immune systems to lessen the effects. Like, for example, why did Elena have an easier time? What's different about her?
I really don't know. And there's such a wide spectrum between the way our kids got sick.
Yeah, they were all different. And as adults, we didn't get sick at all, really.
So it has been quite an experience, and we've talked a lot about what it means to be responsible for the people around you when you have something like this.
Yeah, especially when it comes to children.
Right.
Because they'll tell you if you're sick or not.
So
I think we're going to call this the throw up episode.
Do you want to? Is it that, or are we just talking about?
Well, we're talking about what we've been doing for the past 2 weeks.
Feeding children very carefully and trying to get them better.
Very, very little. Meanwhile, we're enjoying nice steaks.
Yeah, we actually got a nice steak for Friday night because none of our children were able to eat.
So we got one steak, shared it between the two of us.
I did end up feeding a lot of people last night. They ate things like they were eating plain chicken, or Abigail had broth and crackers, and Elena had yogurt.
Now, last Friday, I went to the grocery store, and Lauren had a big, long list of things to get for the weekend.
I said, we better stock up now.
And that was not last Friday. That was the Friday before last.
Like not yesterday, but
Not
last
yesterday,
Friday.
but a week ago. And 2 rotisserie chickens really came in handy.
We don't usually buy things like rotisserie chickens. Ben went out and bought all kinds of things we never buy. He bought white bread because when you have kids who are really sick and you feed them white toast, for some reason they can often handle that in the beginning easier than stuff that has more fiber in it.
And Jell-O.
A lot of Jell-O.
We don't normally eat Jell-O a lot, but...
I don't ever make Jell-O.
Think the girls like Jell-O?
I
Oh,
think
Elena likes it.
Elena does. What did she say to you?
I forget.
She came in the office a couple days ago and she's like, Dad, you know what's nice about being sick? We get to eat wed Jell-O.
Wed Jell-O. So she likes wed Jell-O.
Everyone else is now on a Jell-O strike.
I did not eat any Jell-O this. So they like the red Jell-O better than the yellow Jell-O?
Apparently so. I found that making yellow Jell-O is a waste of time.
How about green Jell-O? That's just nasty.
Nobody will eat the green Jell-O.
You know,
Except me, I like green Jell-O.
they had a bunch of interesting flavors that I was thinking about getting. I didn't get them. One was pineapple and...
Well, today is the first day that I see a light at the end of the tunnel. I think they are getting better. Although we still have a few days until we get to the 8-day point for Elena, I actually think that she may be better already. I'm hoping we have no more relapses.
Now, I did suggest doing a Ben and Lauren show last Saturday, but I think we were too exhausted by the end of the day.
Yeah, we just weren't sure what was going on with our kids, and by the time we got them all tucked in, and it's like, we're going to bed now.
We're done with our day. So besides taking care of children, anything else interesting happened this week?
I listened to a lot of news stories and podcasts and stuff.
Yeah?
It was quiet. I was doing a lot of laundry.
Yeah. We had a nice tour of the garden today. The weather was just beautiful today.
We finally, I think the cold weather is breaking. It's really late to break this year. We weren't even planning on putting the garden in this week, even though it's frost date.
We're thinking about expanding the garden this year.
Well, we said that already. We're hoping to, but we weren't even going to plant by the frost date because we still had, what is that? Something flying around. We still had nights that were going down to 43 to 45 degrees, and that's just, it's too cold to plant the seedlings at that point.
So our cherry tree is blossoming. Mm-hmm. It's beautiful. And our clematis vine is growing. I saw the comfrey that we planted. It's just huge, and it's growing these beautiful flowers.
The comfrey is knee-high already, in spite of the cold weather.
Now, comfrey is typically a weed. I mean, you're constantly pulling these things up, but we got this Russian variety that's, I guess, a little less weed-like.
It doesn't grow from seed.
It grows from root.
Right.
It's just beautiful, these dark green leaves.
The leaves are about this long.
And they're real fuzzy, furry.
And we bought that to use as fertilizer.
So you basically take the leaves, put them in make a compost tea out of it, and it's a free fertilizer. Comes back every year.
High in nitrogen.
And that's what we need. Our garden really needs nitrogen.
It's very low in nitrogen. You also can companion plant it. You can start planting it. It was advised to plant it around fruit trees because it actually pulls nitrogen from the air. I'm not sure how it does that. And puts it in the ground.
Now that's different than mingled seed.
Well, if you go to an orchard, which God plants, you'll find all kinds of crazy stuff growing all around the feet of the fruit trees.
Right. So we're not taking multiple seeds and just putting them in the ground in various places and letting them grow up and do their thing.
No, we have plants that are growing in the orchard.
Mm-hmm. Every orchard has plants growing in the orchard.
So I think it's okay to do.
I think so too.
So that was one thing. We spent a lot of time looking at our yard this week as it was warming up, going, oh my goodness, there's a lot of work to do we can't get to yet. And I'm hoping we can work on it this week.
Hopefully tomorrow. Get a whole bunch done. We'll see. I got to mow the lawn.
We passed 18 weeks pregnant this week. That's always a good, I like that. I'm not sure why 18 weeks. You really can't have a baby born safely, but I think it's because the baby starts moving a lot more.
We've been saving money for our midwife. We're
over halfway there. That's a really good feeling. It's always nice to have everything all saved up. When
Don't
the
let
baby's
anybody
born.
ever say babies are expensive. Because they really aren't, but you know,
You do have to set the
you
money
do have
aside.
to set the money aside for the midwife, and it takes basically the length of a pregnancy to set enough money aside
For us.
For us.
For us.
But I mean, we're just, as money comes, usually cash. As cash comes in, we set it aside, and little by little, cash comes in, and little by little, it accumulates to be enough.
It is interesting, though, even if we carried insurance, we belong to a bill share program, which if we belonged to the highest level of the bill share program, it would cover the midwife fee, but we found out that we'd have to pay so much more over the course of the year for me to be on that level of sharing that it makes more sense for us to pay our midwife out of pocket. Her fee is low enough that it's lower than what we would pay extra.
We would have to have a lot of babies to make it worthwhile.
It still wouldn't be worthwhile because still out of pocket.
Because
It's
it takes
less for
9
us.
months, plus the time in between.
So I figured out that if we had insurance, we would probably have a deductible. I know that it's good right now to have about a $7,000 deductible. So if we went into the hospital, we would be paying $7,000 per baby. That's
Yep.
just the way it would go.
And that's typical.
And with paying our midwife out of pocket, we're paying about a quarter of that?
Yeah, it's a lot less.
Maybe about a quarter of that.
But it's funny when we're dealing with cash, a couple grand seems like a lot
It's
of money.
a lot of money when you save
It's
it
a
up.
lot of $20 bills.
Yeah, we have to keep it in a special secret location in our house so it won't disappear. So those are all things that have kind of been going on in the background. And
else?
we said the Torah portion, we were too sleepy to remember much of it this week. I thought a lot about how impressive it is that God built our immune systems to function the way they do, so that sometime in the past, Ben and I have both had rotavirus. Most people get it before the age of 5. So we effectively were inoculated as children, to the point where what we got this time, nothing. And our
that's
children,
why the symptoms basically were a small fever and then done.
our children in the future, when they're exposed to rotavirus again, and they will have the same experience.
Yep.
And
Except this little one. The new one.
yeah, well, this one won't. But I'm sure this little one, if this little one gets rotavirus, the rest of us won't get as sick.
That's true.
And what's interesting is whatever we got as children, it was never, I don't ever remember going through what happened as children, but it was enough to help us now. And what's amazing is how God made this immune system to work. And we think we have to trick it.
But we've never had an 8-day stomach bug before. I know I never have before.
But whatever we had as children was enough to protect us now.
I guess it was.
And every other adult we know. We know several families now, and all the adults have had similar experience.
And that's why, inoculations are so popular. Because wouldn't it be nice if everyone was just inoculated ahead of time?
Right. And the whole problem comes in when we try to sidestep the way the immune system works and fool it, instead of coming up with ways to mitigate the symptoms of the disease, to let our bodies naturally build this immunity and then help the body to heal better so that we don't have catastrophic effects from getting measles.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of my pet peeves this week. I was looking for some information that would help us get better. And when I called the pediatrician's office, they told me that they've been fielding calls constantly from people with the same problem. So there's an outbreak in our area.
A huge outbreak.
And if our daughter almost went to the ER and there's parents calling frantically to the pediatrician's office, what do? I'm willing to bet there was hundreds of children that ended up with this in the ER in our area this week.
And is it in the news? Nope.
Not a single word. All they will talk about is the outbreak of measles, which hasn't yet put anybody in our area in the hospital.
Which means that increasingly the news is not really the news.
You would
The
think
news-
somebody would figure this out.
The news is all about propagating a particular idea and accomplishing a specific goal.
Right.
There's an agenda.
Measles is scary. Rotavirus, not so bad.
That's kind of what it is.
I'll tell that to the many, many parents these past 2 weeks who have been at their wits' end with how to get their kids better. And we found out that the rotavirus vaccine does protect against 4 strains of rotavirus, but we now know from personal experience it does not protect against this one.
No. Not at all.
So even people who tried to protect their kids are getting this. So
Nobody is safe.
nobody's safe. You got to go through this. I feel a little bit better. We're at least inoculated. I won't feel so bad about going to the grocery store once we're all, out of
There's other
contagion.
strains.
There are, but probably not prevalent this year.
We don't like being sick. We don't like our children being sick.
Well, nobody does, but mostly I think for us it's because we have the number of young children we have. It can be quite an exhausting experience.
I'm exhausted.
Yep. Well, I feel better today than I have the rest of this week.
Yeah. Well, it's
Yeah.
finally over.
Elena's back in her own bedroom.
And that's why we're doing the Ben and Lauren show.
And that's why we're running late 35 minutes talking about what it's like to go through a rotavirus epidemic in our house.
Yeah, I think we could probably call it a night for now. So, hope everybody enjoyed all this being sick talk, but that's what's been on our minds for the past couple weeks.
Well, and hopefully everyone who's watching is not sick, and maybe someone will have gained some some moments of laughter over us going, oh no.
I hope so. Anyway, that's been tonight's Ben and Lauren show. Say goodnight, Lauren.
Good night, Lauren.
Bye-bye.